Everything changed the moment my own sister smiled at my fiancé in front of my entire family and reached for his hand, as if I did not even exist. They thought they were about to humiliate me, steal everything I had built, and force me to surrender without a fight. What they never imagined was that my fiancé had been waiting for that exact moment, and within a single minute, their perfect world began collapsing right before everyone's eyes. My name is Madison Carter, and for most of my life, I believed that if I worked hard enough, stayed respectful, and kept proving myself, my family would eventually treat me like I mattered. Instead, every success I earned only made me a bigger target. My father, Richard, had spent decades running our family's commercial real estate empire like a dictator. Control meant everything to him, and the easiest way to keep it was by turning his children against one another. My younger sister Chloe was always his favorite. She received expensive vacations, luxury cars, and endless praise, while every accomplishment of mine was dismissed as luck or simply expected. Rather than joining the family company, I built my own digital marketing agency from the ground up. It took years of sleepless nights, impossible deadlines, and countless sacrifices before major corporate clients finally trusted my business. The company became profitable faster than anyone expected, and for the first time, I felt proud of something that belonged entirely to me. Instead of celebrating my success, my father and Chloe became strangely interested in my finances, my clients, and every detail of my business. At first, I thought they were finally showing support, but I slowly realized they were gathering information for reasons that had nothing to do with family. Thankfully, I wasn't facing everything alone. My fiancé, Ethan, worked as a respected cybersecurity consultant for several large corporations. His job had taught him to notice patterns most people ignored, and it didn't take long for him to recognize the manipulation happening inside my family. Chloe constantly found excuses to stand too close to him during family gatherings. She complimented him in ways that crossed every reasonable boundary and made little jokes suggesting he deserved someone less focused on work. Every time I reacted, my father laughed and called it harmless teasing. According to him, they were simply testing whether Ethan was loyal enough to become part of the family. The explanation sounded ridiculous, but everyone else accepted it as normal. The truth became impossible to ignore over the following months. Chloe's flirting became more aggressive, while my father quietly pressured me to merge my company into the family business. He insisted it would simplify taxes and protect future investments. Something about the proposal felt wrong, and Ethan agreed. Together, we began reviewing every conversation, every contract, and every unusual request. The deeper we looked, the clearer it became that my father wasn't trying to help me. He was positioning himself to take control of everything I had built. Then came the annual summer barbecue at my parents' estate. More than 30 relatives filled the backyard, while food smoked on the grill and conversations drifted through the humid afternoon air. I stood near the dessert table slicing cake, trying to survive another exhausting family event without creating drama. Across the yard, I watched Chloe walk directly toward Ethan with complete confidence, wearing a smile that told me she believed she had already won. She stopped inches away from him and rested her hand against his shoulder while everyone watched. Loud enough for nearby relatives to hear, she suggested he deserved someone who actually knew how to enjoy life, instead of spending every day working. Then she hinted that if he ever wanted someone more exciting, she would gladly show him what he had been missing. My father's laughter echoed across the yard as he lifted his drink in approval. My mother lowered her eyes and stayed silent, just as she always had. Every conversation around us stopped. I could feel dozens of relatives waiting for my reaction. They expected tears, anger, or another humiliating argument that would entertain everyone for the rest of the afternoon. Instead, I quietly placed the cake knife on the table and looked at Ethan. He gave me a calm nod that told me everything was about to change. He slowly walked away from Chloe without saying a single word and headed straight toward my father's table. The confidence disappeared from my father's face the moment Ethan reached inside his jacket and carefully placed a small digital recorder beside his plate. The entire backyard fell silent as Ethan looked directly at my father. There was no anger in his expression, only complete confidence. My father leaned back in his chair with a smug grin, convinced this was another desperate attempt to defend me. He casually told Ethan to stop making a scene and enjoy the barbecue like everyone else. Ethan calmly explained that what had been treated as a family joke had crossed into something far more serious. Then he pressed the play button on the recorder. Within seconds, the unmistakable voices of my father and Chloe filled the backyard, and every person sitting there realized they were listening to a private conversation that was never meant to become public. The recording revealed exactly what Ethan and I had feared for months. My father spoke about using Chloe to create a public scandal that would damage my reputation and convince people I was emotionally unstable. Once my engagement collapsed, they planned to pressure me into stepping away from my company so they could quietly absorb my business into the family corporation. Chloe laughed throughout the conversation, bragging that flirting with Ethan during family events would make the entire story believable if anyone questioned their version of events later. She sounded proud of herself, almost excited by the idea of destroying my future for financial gain. The recording ended, but nobody moved. Several relatives stared at my father in complete disbelief while others looked at Chloe as though they had never truly known her. An aunt covered her mouth with both hands, and one of my cousins slowly shook his head without saying a word. My mother looked completely frozen, finally realizing that the lies she had ignored for years had exploded into the open. Chloe's face lost all color as she gripped her wine glass so tightly that I thought it might shatter in her hand. My father suddenly jumped to his feet and accused Ethan of illegally spying on him. His voice echoed through the yard as he threatened lawsuits, professional revenge, and the destruction of Ethan's career. Ethan waited patiently until the shouting stopped before calmly explaining that no illegal surveillance had taken place. As the cybersecurity consultant responsible for maintaining several parts of my father's corporate communication system, he had discovered that an office intercom had accidentally remained active during one of their meetings. The conversation had been preserved automatically by internal security logs, and once evidence of financial crimes became obvious, he was legally required to report it. Then Ethan reached into his jacket once again and placed a thick folder on the table. Inside were financial reports, corporate records, email archives, and documentation that connected months of suspicious transactions. I stepped beside him and finally spoke without fear. I told everyone that this was never about sibling jealousy or embarrassing family games. My father and Chloe had spent months planning to steal everything I had worked for while pretending it was all part of some harmless loyalty test. They underestimated us because they believed intimidation would keep us silent forever. Instead, every insult they made gave us more time to gather evidence. At that exact moment, Ethan looked down at his phone after hearing a notification. He quietly smiled before announcing that a complete package containing every recording, financial document, and forensic report had already been delivered to state investigators earlier that afternoon. While everyone had been enjoying lunch, government agencies had begun reviewing evidence involving corporate fraud, conspiracy, misuse of trust funds, and financial misconduct. My father stared at Ethan as though he could not believe anyone had outplanned him. For the first time in my life, I saw genuine fear replace his confidence. Only seconds later, Chloe pulled out her phone and gasped. Her luxury credit cards had stopped working. Notifications informed her that multiple financial accounts connected to the family trust had been temporarily frozen pending investigation. She looked desperately at my father, begging him to explain what was happening. Before he could answer, Ethan calmly informed them that their primary lender had also received notice of the investigation. Because of fraud clauses within their commercial agreements, the bank had already begun accelerating several outstanding loans. Years of carefully constructed wealth were beginning to collapse in real time. My father slowly dropped back into his chair. The powerful businessman, who had spent decades controlling everyone around him, suddenly looked exhausted and defeated. His expensive suit, confident posture, and intimidating personality meant nothing anymore. He had always believed money could erase consequences and manipulation could silence people forever. That illusion disappeared as the front gates opened and several investigators entered the property alongside uniformed police officers. They walked directly toward the patio while every relative watched in stunned silence. The investigators briefly introduced themselves before informing my father that he was being formally detained while the financial investigation continued. Chloe was also taken into custody for her role in the conspiracy against my company. Neither of them argued for very long because they both understood the evidence was overwhelming. As they were escorted away, nobody rushed to defend them. The same relatives who had laughed at my humiliation only minutes earlier simply watched in complete silence as the family empire crumbled before their eyes. The following months changed my life in ways I never imagined possible. Court proceedings uncovered years of financial deception hidden beneath the appearance of success. My father's business empire was dismantled piece by piece to satisfy legal judgments and unpaid obligations. Chloe lost the luxurious lifestyle she had always taken for granted, and the social circles that once admired her disappeared almost overnight. People who had been attracted to wealth quickly vanished once the money was gone. For me, however, life finally became peaceful. Ethan and I married surrounded by people who genuinely loved and respected us instead of pretending for appearances. My marketing agency continued growing across the country, earning clients because of honest work rather than family influence. Every achievement felt more meaningful because I knew nobody could take it away from me. Looking back now, I realize the greatest victory was never seeing my father lose his fortune or watching Chloe face the consequences of her choices. The real victory was breaking free from a family that believed love should always come with conditions. They expected obedience, silence, and endless sacrifice while offering nothing in return. Walking away from that cycle gave me something far more valuable than money. It gave me freedom, self-respect, and the chance to build a future surrounded by people who truly wanted me to succeed. If this story teaches anything, it is that toxic relatives often mistake kindness for weakness. They assume you will tolerate betrayal simply because you share the same last name. But protecting your peace is never selfish. The moment someone repeatedly proves they value your success only when they can control it, believe their actions instead of their promises. Real family is not defined by blood. It is defined by trust, respect, loyalty, and the people who stand beside you when everything is on the line. Sometimes the bravest decision you will ever make is walking away from the people who are supposed to protect you, and choosing instead to protect yourself.